Good morning, PlayStation Universe, and welcome to episode 53 of PlayStation Fix. My name is Will Robinson, and joining me, as always, is Kyle Pro.
Good morning.
Good morning. So I think I've got a couple of topics that I'm very interested to hear your thoughts on.
hmm
Um,
I do as well. I
oh,
think this
that's
could be a
good.
good day.
Yeah,
I have an inkling that there's a possibility we might have the same topic. That's total
it
speculation,
could
but
be. One of my topics is related to a mug that I'm currently drinking out of. So,
all right, well, at least one of ours are different. There's absolutely no way that we share that in common, but
okay.
well, wait, no, maybe.
Hmm. Well,
If I'm thinking of the mug,
let's
there's a
start
shot
off with the mystery topic then that you have that you think may or may not be the same.
that we think may or may not be shared.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about E3 2017 opening its doors to the public.
Oh, that's not one I had, so
Oh, really?
yeah.
Nice.
Which
Snuck
I
in
do
there.
have a couple E3 mugs, so
Well, that's what I thought. I was
yeah.
like, at first I thought Mass Effect mug, but then I was like, no, you definitely have an E3 mug.
Hmm.
No, here's what's going on with E3 2017. This news came out 4 days ago. The Entertainment Software Association, which puts on E3, announced that E3 2017 will be open to the public, where in recent years it has been limited to industry and media professionals. We'll talk in a little bit about what that actually means,
Hmm.
limited to professionals, but
Yeah.
I'll quote this from the PCGamer.com article. Starting this Monday, February 13th, tomorrow as we record, the ESA will begin selling 15,000 general access tickets for the trade show. Tickets will go on sale for $150 a piece, but the price will rise to $250 after that. It doesn't say whether that's on a per day basis. I'm guessing it covers the 3 days, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Passes will get attendees access to the show floor with all the booths and game demos, as well as panel discussions and something or other involving Jeff Keighley. That's actually what it says here.
Jeez.
Um, ESA VP of Communications Rich Taylor tells GameSpot the change was, quote, a strategic decision, end quote, based on feedback from last year's public E3 live event. I think you'll remember that, Will, is the thing that happened. Is that the Nokia Theater, like right across the way? It's all part of this whole
Mm-hmm.
like Staples Center, Convention Center, a bunch of business parks, entertainment venues that are all sort of crammed into that block. But yeah,
Yeah.
there was a public portion there called E3 Live that, from what I could tell, was just the pits. I remember Adam telling us a little bit about it, and it seemed very slim. Not many people could get in. There wasn't a lot to see there. Kind of
Hmm.
a waste of time was the general perception. But when this news dropped a few days ago, I was kind of following along with it on Twitter, and there was quite a divide in opinion. What I
Yeah.
noticed is that folks like us, and that is to say games writers, people who are used to covering it in a work context, I mean, this was like the worst thing in the world.
Hmm.
And that's personally where I kind of fall in it. So I
Yeah.
just imagine the way the show currently is, where I guess if what I've read is correct, they did sell like a limited number of public passes last year.
Yeah.
Like
See,
maybe,
this is what it doesn't make any sense to me at all if they're saying announcing that they opened it to the public and they're selling 15,000 tickets. I brought up we got after you attend E3, you get an email from the group when you're registered that gives just random updates going on. One of the ones we got
yes,
last year was that it said the total numbers of attendees and the capacity that they were attending from. Um, and let's see, we had last year there were over 70,000 people, 50,300 video game professionals, analysts, journalists, enthusiasts attended this week's trade show, and 20,000 fans attended E3 Live. So whether they
three
get
live. Okay, so
so
that's
they have
that
they
side.
have the light version, but yeah, it's just but there were a lot of people that there are tons of people that are walking around the convention center
Yeah, there
that are
definitely are.
not press or anything like
Yes.
that. There's like thousands of them. So
And that
it's
makes it really frustrating for us doing our jobs. I think when people when I've been able to glean from reading opinions after this announcement is that the folks that we would see on E3 who are just so clearly fans and not there for any work purpose,
hmm.
and there's so many of them, right? Usually they get invited through somebody they know, or that I guess E3 did sell like 2,000 or 3,000 public passes kind of on the down low last year just to test it out. So
Hmm.
there's a whole mix of like you know somebody or you're a friend of somebody, or you were one of these lucky few who's kind of snuck in. Like, it's a whole mix of it, but what you end up with is a show floor that is just packed to the gills, impossible to move through, frankly unsafe at times when you're really stuck in a crowd and it's just moving in seven different directions like molasses. I mean, it's atrocious in spots, and it makes our thing difficult. Where now it's at the point where don't even bother booking a 10 a.m. appointment to go see a game or a demo because that's when the doors open and you'll never make it in time. And I've actually, like, because we've had to fight crowds and because we've had to run back and forth across the convention center in past years, I think every successive year we've booked slightly fewer appointments to try to compensate for that. And it still ends up being this mad rush that's incredibly frustrating. You're shoving through people. So now take that current stasis and add 15,000 people to it without any other change, without any change in line setup or
Yeah.
security or common pathways.
Well, there's
And
there's like
think you just get a
physically,
madhouse.
where the games are concentrated, there physically is not enough space for
That's true. Yeah.
people like that number of an increase of people going in there. So
Especially the whatever hall it is where Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo kind of dominate. There's
yeah.
that big artery that sort of cuts between Sony and Nintendo, and that hallway is just immovable throughout
hmm
the week already. And that's the hallway that people are going to want to hang in. I mean, that's the public is going to want to see Sony and Microsoft. Like those are the names I think they attach to their favorite games, maybe a bit less so than the Capcoms and the 2Ks that are over in the other hall.
hmm
So that situation is going to get even worse. And I'm not sure that there's some analysis behind this as well. There's the thought that, okay, how do we get these publishers who are leaving, that is to say EA, Activision, where they downsize every year, how do we get them to come back? And I guess E3 seems to think the answer is allowing more public in so that there's an incentive to, like, you want to be present because there are 15,000 average Joe gamers hanging out, right? You want to have
hmm
your name there, but I'm not sure that actually solves the problem. I don't know that
No.
companies are leaving E3 because of the foot traffic. I think they're leaving because they recognize we can get more visibility by pouring our money into a really sophisticated live stream.
Yeah.
And the people who care about us are going to care about us, and the others will find out about it through Facebook or Twitter or whatever.
Right. Yeah. I mean, even just last year with EA moving to their own space, it was a lot nicer setup for them than being crammed in on the floor.
Yeah, it definitely was.
It
I
was
don't.
it was just you can't compete with that type of if somebody makes that decision to move to for convenience and for a better more controlled setup on their end from their company side. It's having people come in. I think part of it is just they want to make some money back on this whole convention, so they're selling tickets. Or if you're press, you're not
Right.
selling the tickets for
Well,
the
I think
press.
also with EA pulling out of the money it used to spend on its booth, the ESA has this hole to fill now of revenue where they're
Yeah.
like, oh, well, like we that's a lot of money. I mean, I'm not, we can't say how much EA paid to have an entire quadrant of that hall all to itself, but I'm sure it was in the six figures,
hmm
considerably, if not more, which is you got to make that up, right?
Yeah.
I think the sentiment from a lot of journalists, and I totally agree with this. Journalists have like average gamers who follow them on Twitter for like opinions and stuff, and a lot of the sentiment is this isn't worth your money. Like
hmm Yeah.
$150 on an E3 ticket, you will be hot, sweaty, you'll probably get sick, and you won't be able to play
Yeah.
anything despite what you
You'd
think.
play
Like
maybe two games over the course of 3 or 4 days because you'd
because
be
it's
waiting in
just
line.
and you and I know how bad the lines already are, which is
Yeah.
supposedly just, there's kind of these three tiers. There's the press who go and their entire week is like private demos, which ours is like 80% that.
hmm
There's the next tier, which would be enthusiasts who maybe write for a blog or do videos, but they're kind of small time, so they have to stand in lines.
hmm
And then there's the third tier, which will be this public that just has no chance. Like the lines that were
Right.
already super long are just going to get
And it
much, much
damages and
longer.
it damages the tier that you just mentioned of the more enthusiast crowd that are trying to do startups for their blogs or doing videos and stuff. Where it's
Yeah.
if you flood those lines even more with just people that are just there to be there,
Hmm.
that group is completely missing out on potential opportunities and growth for them. So it's
Absolutely. Yeah, they have to wait in lines that are twice as long that already were atrocious.
yeah. So really,
I
it's gonna really come down to just being big name YouTubers and big name journalist sites, and
Fighting their way
that's
through
going to be it.
crowds
I mean, well, no,
of
they're going to be
fans.
the only ones that are going to get those private appointments eventually.
Oh, right, having actual coverage from it.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was another thing people were saying is that like some longtime freelance journalists that I follow were saying like I don't know why I would go this year because the same demos that are at E3 usually show up at PAX a month
it's
later,
the same setups, exactly the
and
same booth setups too.
yeah, and we've always like, and we've known about this since we started going physically and covering it for PSU, you and I, is that you do get to do cool work there. I mean, the videos that we film, the podcasts and stuff we record, that's interesting work,
Hmm.
but there is absolutely no doubt in my mind that the work being done by our folks at home covering news, covering the shows is just simply more productive and
Yeah.
beneficial for the website. There's just no two ways about it. It's great when you can have both, but you think about the time and energy commitment to go there, and now the job just got harder. Not to mention, you're just adding 15,000 people to the already bursting at the seams hotel market in the area. Like,
Hmm.
where are all those people going to go? The Airbnbs are going to be fought for. The hotel rooms are going to be fought for. It's man, it's a tough sell in any stretch. There are folks trying to make a positive thing out of it. I actually brought up this. I guess I would characterize this as a press release, sort of. It's on gamesindustry.biz, which tends to talk about game industry issues like legal issues, publisher issues. And this kind of reads like a bit of a puff piece because you've got this quote from Microsoft, right? Official Microsoft spokesperson. We're looking forward to E3 this year and the opportunity for more fans to come to the show. Like it's such a placating, like kind of response.
Hmm.
Ubisoft says, we support the ESA's approach to open E3 to more customers, and this year will be a good test for the new hybrid model. Getting games in players' hands early and hearing their feedback helps our industry, both in terms of improving the quality of games and shining a light on new and innovative ideas and technology. That's not what E3 is at all. That's
No.
there's no executive standing behind fans at a demo going, "Oh, taking paper notes."
Well, then
It's
that's
it
also too is just like there's a reason why this is just in a general sense. The thing that just annoys me is that every single person's opinion is taken as equally valid on certain things without no matter what the training is or background of that person.
mhm.
Where it's just like people can have opinions and they're entitled to their opinions, but if it's constructive criticism or being able to express a point in a certain way to be helpful to a developer, there are people like you and I and a lot of other people in the industry that have been trained in how to do that over the years.
Yeah,
So if you
for
open that
experience.
up to people who are in their early teens that are coming in and they're just like they know this type of game they like, they play a game that they're not familiar with, that's a different genre, and all of a sudden they just say, "Well, this game is just crap. It's horrible because it's all blah 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 blah," and
Right.
that
There's
doesn't
no
benefit
literacy.
anybody. That
Yeah.
benefits nobody. It's just all you're doing is letting like I don't see it. There's no like well, like you said, that's not E3 is not about getting games to fans early. That's not what it was. It can go into that, but
There are a
then
lot
you're
of
going to
other
have a
shows that serve that need. PAX
yeah,
is the big one. Like that's why
right.
it
You
exists.
have yeah, there's a lot of outlets that already do that and they do provide it where you can get a huge consent, you can get that giant sample group of public opinion. And that's a very different resource than having a more controlled environment that's just for press and
Hmm.
people who have been involved in industry stuff for years. So it's to me, it's just saying that they don't value that input as much anymore.
Well, here's where I think it hurts a mid-tier publisher like a Square Enix or a Capcom is that if you take this in a vacuum, like compare 2016 to what 2017 will be, I think there will simply be just less coverage of your games because of a variety of factors. Less journalists are, maybe not a ton less, but slightly less journalists will go to the show. Like there will just be some who don't bother.
Yeah.
The ones who do go there will have less time for the kind of demos and appointments that create the news articles and previews that live online.
Hmm.
And then it because of the crowdedness of the show floor and because of the number of people there, I especially think of Square Enix. I'm like, I couldn't play Kingdom Hearts 2.8 or Final Fantasy 12 HD there because every time I would walk by, there would be maybe 20 people huddled around the
Yeah,
screens in
I
a
had to
line.
wait probably
So,
30, 40 minutes just to play
so
2.8.
double that, so double that wait, and then are you going to bother? Of course not.
Yeah.
And it's not like companies have a ton of flexibility when it comes to their booth setups. I think part of the reason that they're able to save money each year is that you don't reinvent the wheel every time. So with Square's example, they have small meeting rooms for developer interviews, but there's really no PR workflow in place for a week's worth of
Hmm.
private gameplay appointments. Like they'd have to sort of invent that from scratch, and I'm not sure they will. So at the end of the day,
No,
they
no.
just get less coverage. E3 is less valuable to them
Hmm.
because fans aren't writing things. I mean, you bring your game there as a trade show because you want to carve out a piece of the internet hive mind for your game. Like you
Hmm.
want in the summer news cycle, you want some people to be talking about Vampire, you want some people to be talking about FF12 HD, and I just think those pie slices are going to be much smaller.
Yeah, and that's just gonna it's gonna restrict the coverage in a lot of ways where it's just like half the games that I saw last year, given this new model for how I'm expecting it to go, I wouldn't have even have seen them or had time to sit down and play them or opportunity to play them.
Hmm.
So that's so it's just going to be more focused on bigger titles. There's not going to be nearly as much talk on some of the smaller games that are out there. The only coverage they'll get is passing conversations on just either from person to person from people that were there or just maybe a random tweet from a couple of people, but that's it. And
Yeah.
that really sucks because there's a lot of really, really great games still that are showing up there that people are making an effort to show and want attention for, and they're just not going to get it anymore.
I think they're overvaluing that influencer marketing. Like as I scroll down through this kind of puff
Was it?
piece
Yeah.
from gamesindustry.biz, they mentioned like a couple like this NPD analyst and the boss of Team 17, Debbie Bestwick. Like so there's a few people here saying that like, oh, the role of the gamer has changed now. We really look to fans and consumers to sort of spread to get the word of mouth engine turning and spread positive buzz. But I I kind of see the opposite. Like
Hmm.
there's so much information on Twitter, there's so much information on Instagram that these thoughts and these opinions about games are incredibly fleeting.
Hmm.
And there's value to the guy who, like your Jim Sterlings of the world or your annoyed gamers of the world who have this sizable YouTube following. Of course, there's incredible value to them talking about your game and covering your game, but you can incorporate this new generation of media into your show without opening it to fans. I don't think that's the right approach because
Hmm.
there's no quality control there. It's not like we're vetting these
No.
15,000 people. Like
Yeah.
the vast majority of them are just going to be refreshing their browsers at midnight when the sales open because they're fans and they've want this once in a lifetime chance to go to E3.
Right. And
They're not going to go
15,000
home and
fans
talk
is,
about your
yeah,
game.
15,000 fans. 15,000 is a lot. Like, we're talking about how that's a lot of people to fit into a venue, which it is.
Mhm.
But if you're talking about worldwide coverage for a game,
Oh, it's
why would you sacrifice having a handful of YouTube channels that aren't necessarily as big or a handful of other medium-sized press outlets that get several thousand views for anything they put up
for
for
15,000 people, 11,000 of whom might have two Twitter followers.
yeah, and
Like they'll
they're
just
not
go
going to
home to
say anything,
Nebraska and tell
and
their
it's such
friends
a
about the game they
controlled.
played.
You're not going to get people traveling off from all over coming into this. Really, you're going to get some people that are going to make an effort to pay a few $100s to get out there and be there for a few days, but it's going to be primarily locals.
I would think it'd be mostly California locals,
Yeah,
yeah.
so it's just like you're not expanding your market. These people already know about all these things. They have Comic Con and all these different places that showcase all these games because so much of those worlds are now intertwined
Right.
for those conferences. So I don't. There's just no. There's no practical reason for doing this, as far as I can tell.
I'm right there with
Aside
you.
from them not wanting E3 to be E3 anymore. That's how I see it.
Right, tank what it used to be and try to feel out something new, which I don't know if that's your sustainable business model because there's just so many shows that fans can
Yeah.
attend throughout the
That's
year.
that's I don't
And
understand why you would turn this into another PAX or Comic Con or anything like that. It's like this is its own thing. It's an established
Mhm.
thing, and it works really well unless it's just people are concerned about money or they don't want opinions
Mm.
from outlets as much anymore. Or I don't know.
Yeah, I guess if I was running the event, I'd have a hard time justifying let's trade the convenience and accessibility for for professionals with large audiences on the off chance that these rando 50,000 people have influencer audiences, but really it's just a jackpot with terrible odds. Like, all
Yeah,
right, let's let this crowd in and see what happens.
yeah.
Um,
It seems more of just kind of a PR stunt to me, where it's just like we're giving stuff to you, the gamer, and it's like, well, no, you're not really. You're just making it harder for everybody. Because
Drumming up hype,
yeah,
really,
because
right?
the people that get in, they're honestly just gonna waste their time. Like E3 is really cool to see, but that visual, the visuals of that just wears off really quick when you're standing in line for 2 hours. It's like
Yeah.
it gets tiresome really quick. Which I had to do that one year. I had to wait in line for a total of 2 hours. Actually, this was at EA's booth before they had moved, where I waited in line for about an hour at one game. I think this was Mirror's Edge. Waited for like an hour, and the cutoff happened right in front of me, so I had to leave and try again the next day. And the same thing happened to me when I was trying to play Battlefront or Battlefield. Or no, it was Battlefront. Yeah. And same thing happened. I was pressed waiting in line for about an hour, and then the cutoff happened in front of me again, and then the day
Mhm.
ended, and it was just like, and they just freely let in like 6 or 7 other people that just happened to be walking by because they knew the person that was at the door or whatever.
Mhm.
So it was just
There's a lot of that, yeah, the nepotism and the infiltration like that.
yeah. So it's just like, and then like if I was in there as a press and I had to wait that long just to get to two major games, it's just like good luck for the average Joe that wants to spend money to get in to begin with, and then sit and wait. Like even like Adam tried last year for Resident Evil 7 for every single day, just like trying to get a ticket or things to wait in line and get there, and it never happened.
That's right.
It's
Yeah.
just like that's how crazy competitive time is there, and like for people trying to get in there, it's like just like press. If you're in the public, you could stand and if you stand and wait in line at a if there's a big game that's coming out and you want to see it, and you stand in there as soon as stand in line as soon as doors open, you might be able to get to it by the time the doors close.
Right. Which is just your whole day is shot to get into
Yeah,
one demo.
because that's what would have happened if Adam had had time to do that, or if he didn't have other actual appointments to get to, that would have been the only way he could have played Resident Evil 7. So it's just like that's I don't know.
And he's a guy who's in a position where by playing it, there's that game gets covered, right?
Yeah,
He talks about it, maybe
his
only
time has
3,000
value to
people.
them. Like actual
Exactly.
has like immediate value to that company for being able to get there and play it.
I think the idea of your Sonys and Microsofts being able to directly interface with fans is a good one, but that's why
Hmm.
PlayStation Experience exists. Like
Yeah,
that show has such an intense energy and fan passion because it's built from the opening moment to the close of the weekend. It's built for fans. Like you
yeah,
go and you collect the 52 exclusive PlayStation cards, and all the demos are set up with really efficient lines. And Sony folks are just walking through the crowd throwing games at people. Like it's so like the fans come first, whereas with E3 it's in this
right,
weird. It's just not set up for that.
right.
I mean,
So
from the
that why
press rooms
wouldn't
to the
you
meeting
just
rooms,
expand E3 Live? You said you had 20,000 people attend that.
right?
So
Yeah, try to shift.
why don't you just do it the same thing like you did last year? Either find you could find a different venue or move it up or something, but there needs to be some kind of separation to make it practical.
Yeah, or else the people who actually have audiences will just
Yeah.
go away.
And the people that want to play the games could actually play the games if you have it set up that way, where it's just, okay, you have this much time to play this demo. Like
Hmm.
like E3, you literally. I played like I Am Setsuna at E3 for an hour because there was just like I didn't have. There was actually that was like one of the last days, and I had a break, and then nobody else was there
Right.
because all the people had left. So I just sat there and I played it for an hour because there was no really end time to the demo. But if you have that, that's how it is for everybody else. PR people are managing that stuff.
Hmm.
They're letting the people play it until they want to walk away.
And that's going to be a problem with these crowds too.
Yeah. So it's just why wouldn't you just do E3 live where okay, you got 15 minutes. 10 15 minutes. Once you're done, you have to get out, next person in line comes in, they get to play for a while. You need a better structure for fan experiences. So,
Yeah, just like I want those fans to have a good time too, but they're going
right.
to come onto the show floor. We've already talked about the lines, but then they're going to come up to some places that don't have lines, like say a Maximum Games booth or a Capcom booth, and they're just going to get turned away because they're like, "Do you have an appointment?"
Yeah.
Well, no. What do you mean an appointment? Oh, sorry, we're just. And now it gets confusing, right? Because then the
Yeah.
person has to say, "Oh, sorry, we're just for press. Like we don't have anything for you, the fan." And now
Hmm.
you just feel jilted. You feel like the show isn't really made for
Yeah,
you.
what did I pay to get in for then?
Exactly. What the hell did I pay? Well, it's 150 to start and then 250 if you fall outside of the some opening window.
Huh.
$250 just to enter the premises.
Yeah, just not worth it. Not at all.
No.
So,
All right. Well, that's what I got on E3 2017. It's definitely giving me some trepidation, causing me to think about what the show means to me.
yeah. Maybe we all just go to PAX this year.
That could be fun. That could be a blast,
Yeah,
actually.
that could
Something
be.
totally new.
Yeah. But,
All right. Well, what'd you got?
oh, let's see. Well, I'll do this one since I just started off. One that actually is the one that's related to my mug. I do have an N7 mug, as you said before.
Yeah, that's the other one I was thinking
Yeah,
of.
we got some gameplay details confirmed for Mass Effect.
Hmm.
Finally, we have something that we know about this game that's going to be coming out
Some meat to chew
later
on.
this year. Well, actually, not even really later this year. It's like within a month. It almost is already 2 months.
Yeah, yeah, just about.
Um, so biggest thing that we found out right now is that they have removed the Paragon Renegade system, which is essentially, in my mind, is like that's what Mass Effect is for like 80% of it.
Yeah, well, okay.
But I agree
I'm
with so the reasoning that they had behind it was that they removed it because it felt very Shepard, is what they said,
mhm.
saying that it was specifically tied to that character being, and also that it's more of a you don't have to think when you're making dialogue choices.
That part I agree with completely. I
I
think
agree with that
that's
completely in one sense, but I also very much disagree with it with the follow up point, which is that they like have this is oh, I lost his name, Mac Walters,
mhm.
who was the creative director for Mass Effect, was being interviewed, talking about this and saying that what he likes about the system that they're going to be focusing on is more it's like agree and disagree with characters that you're talking to. It's not Renegade Paragon. So you actually have to pay attention and read what the dialogue choices are.
Mhm.
But having just gone back like for this is totally out of the blue for me really, it was the last week or so, is that I played Dragon Age 2 for the first time just because I've had it and I wanted to play through it, and Mass Effect's coming up and I wanted a BioWare game. So I did that, and it's basically that's the system they have in Dragon Age, which I forgot about that, where it's you agree and disagree essentially in what they talk about. But
Yeah.
this falls into the same issue that I've had with like The Witcher and other things like that we've talked about before, is that you read the text, you expect them to say it a certain way, and it's a totally different response that they give the character that completely screws up whatever you were hoping was
Yeah,
going to
there
happen.
is a
So
there is a danger of that.
that's why I think the Paragon Renegade system was so nice, is that you know immediately how they're going to react. Whereas like there are some certain conversational instances in like the Dragon Age games where you have the kind of like the green check mark and the red like X or whatever are gone from the little icons, and it's just all they're all basically the equal choices is how they're presented to you, but they're worded certain ways, and they switch places, so you have to really think about it and what to decide. It's not just like cookie cutter.
Right.
But then there's half the time when I click on it, and then they basically, something I think it might be like a somewhat snarky tone is like just full of rage and anger, and it's like that's not what I didn't think you were gonna say it that way, or like it's more the text that you see on screen is like paraphrased of what the character's actually going to say, so there's a lot more meaning behind what they actually say than what's represented on the screen, and then it just completely screws you up in what you're doing, and it's like, no, that's not what I wanted you to do, and then now you've immediately like permanently damaged the relationship with that character you were talking to in the game.
Yeah.
And it's just like that's one of the things that I'm not really sold on right now hearing about that. I think it's got a lot of good potential, but there's always, every time I've played a game that does that, it always has that same problem for me.
I'm trying to think of there's a game somewhat recently that was, I don't recall if it was open world or not, but it had these kind of dialogue choices where you would hover over the option and it would show you like below in a subtitle the
The full
entire
text, yeah.
yeah
Didn't
what am
Deus
I
Ex do
thinking of?
that, like the first one?
I think that's probably what it is, yeah. Or even maybe Mankind Divided, because it was fairly recent that I played this. But yeah,
Probably,
you would
yeah.
hover over the option and it would show at least the full opening sentence
Right, yeah, if you do
of the
that.
statement. Yeah, but I totally get what you mean. I think like I my initial thought is that I kind of cheer this move because I totally agree that what you end up doing is you just decide at the beginning of the game this is going to be my Paragon character, and there's actually like gameplay reasons why you need to keep. It's kind of the infamous curse a little bit, where you need to keep choosing the same thing, or else you might get locked out of certain events that happen later.
Yeah.
And I just very much dislike that in theory. Whereas when I play an old school RPG or something like The Witcher, where there is no baked in gameplay reason to choose one or the other, you feel like you develop the character in a much more realistic way, and you can occasionally be sarcastic or be cynical.
Yeah.
So in general, I like it, but I also agree that there have been like Fallout 4 is a great example.
That was the one I knew there was
Just
one
the
I
just
just
the
like,
worst
oh, God.
prompts.
Yeah, I was thinking he's gonna say something in like slight concern, and then he's just like screaming at the person. It's just like,
Yeah,
what?
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's certainly a danger. Hopefully they've played games like that. That's the nice thing is I think folks like BioWare are so ingrained in the industry that they're all playing Fallout when it comes out. They all sort of experience the same frustrations that the average gamer does. So we can hope anyway.
Yeah, and I think it's gonna make a lot more. I think that dialogue system, for like one of the benefits of having it be that way and not being Renegade versus Paragon, is going to be really advantageous to making more interesting story with the interactions because of the fact that they're pathfinders and they're going to other galaxies and locations, or they're going to Andromeda, and they're interacting with new races and species entirely on there. So there's a lot more. It's going to be a lot more realistic instead of just being like, I'm just going to be a dick going into this place and then
Yeah,
piss
for sure.
off all of the people that we meet
You're right. That
and
would suck
create
too,
that
if you,
image for our entire galaxy to this.
Yeah,
So it's
definitely.
so you have a lot more. There's going to be a lot more range where I think it's going to. I hope they can really, really leverage that, where it's just like basically whatever you say has a chance of starting a war. Is kind of where I'm seeing this because you're basically an invasive race coming in.
I mean, yeah, there's really cool opportunity there for just interactions that mean a lot. Like this is kind of your chance to either make partnerships, and this is probably how it'll play out in the sequels, is that some major conflicts will develop, and the negotiations you had or the reputation you had.
Entire planets on your side and against you.
Yeah, just sheerly on how good of an ambassador you are. Like how good of a pathfinder are you actually? And then there's room to fail, and then it makes your life harder later.
Yeah. Yeah, it's gonna be. That part's gonna be really, really cool. I think how they go through that, but still, I'm not. I'm really hoping that they get some really strong and cool characters made off of like that really establish themselves from the characters of the trilogy.
For sure.
Just because there's like, well, like you said, when they had that last trailer that came out, it just looked like it was just a copy paste of the cast visually.
Yeah. And that's a problem because there's every chance that these folks will still be interesting, but when they start off looking like your friends from the previous trilogy, and that's really an issue. Like your image, it's hard to get a fresh read on somebody when you're kind of tainted by these memories of, well, the previous Asari acted like this, or the
Hmm.
previous Turian acted like this.
Yeah,
You're
and
sort of
it's
plagued by those memories.
yeah, and it's just gonna be. And the main villain sounds exactly like the main villain of the of the other games and all
Oh,
that.
Saren with Mass Effect 1.
Well, not Saren, but the
Harbinger?
Harbinger. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like the same style voice
I
going
was
into that.
I was telling you, the other day that Megan started replaying the trilogy again.
Hmm.
So she started with Mass Effect 1,
Hmm.
and holy God, does that game look old?
I
It's
don't
it
know.
is it is absolutely unreal how poorly that game plays compared to 2 and 3. Just it, man,
Yeah,
a really prime example of a game that didn't age well at
yeah.
all.
No, that's like even just when I went back and I had gotten, I think I'd bought Dragon Age 2 for like $2 or something on a flash sale once on
Yeah.
PS3. So like I went back to that to play it, and it was just like, holy God, was that an adjustment? Like way more than I was anticipating. I almost turned it off in like the first 10 minutes. It was like it was that bad. But I mean, it was the same thing, kind of like when I was complaining about how some of the people looked in the trailer a couple weeks ago, where it's just like as soon as you get adjusted to it, it's fine. Like it doesn't bother you at all. Like after I played the game for a couple hours, it was just like I was totally reacclimated to PS3 visuals and setting and quirkiness for the games. Like frame rate was a bitch in that. It was
Right.
so bad in a lot of spots, and it was just. But it was like it was what it was, and you totally in a game like Mass Effect or the Dragon Age or the Bioware games where they take a long time to beat.
hmm
You have plenty of time to just get totally adjusted to them and fall
You
right into the
totally do.
world.
And
So
that's something I try to remind myself of increasingly too, where I felt the same way watching the Mass Effect trailer, but then as we talked through it, I thought, we see these games in these trailers, and so often we get caught up by the facial animation or something being uncanny, but then the moment you play it, your
mhm.
entire worldview changes. Like I've never finished a game like Mass Effect and like immediately after gone, gosh, that would have been so much better if the faces had looked more like The Witcher.
Hmm.
It's totally like an engine adaptation that goes on with every
Yeah,
title.
yeah. All right. Well, I
For
think
sure.
that was pretty much.
Well,
We,
the frame rate conversation kind of segues into my second topic.
okay.
I want to talk about something called boost mode on the PS4 Pro. Have you seen
Who's
anything about
not
this?
beast mode? No.
So, are you familiar with the story? Because beast mode is the joke coming out of
Oh,
the
okay.
fact that it is actually called boost mode.
I mean, I really would. They should just change it to that.
Probably should have been beast mode, right?
Boost
Yeah.
mode. I'm not exactly familiar with it, but I'd imagine it's bumping up from 30 to 60 frames or something like that.
Well, sort of in a way. It's coming in the next firmware update, 4.5, to PS4 Pro. And essentially, the thing with Pro, since it launched, is that it has these boots. Like, there's twice as much GPU speed. The CPU is bumped up by 30% or something. But the games only take advantage of it if they are patched to support the features. Like, by default, like with something like Killzone Shadowfall, that's a few years old.
Hmm.
PS4 Pro runs that. Besides the upscale to 4K, it runs it exactly the same as it was on a base PS4 for true compatibility. Boost mode, coming to PS4 Pro in its next update, will allow you to flip on an option in the settings that unlocks the full PS4 Pro power for every PS4 game. With mixed results. There's
Huh.
actually a disclaimer there that says if you experience unexpected behavior, please turn boost mode off, which is a reference to, the fact that Sony didn't want to do this initially, but I think they saw enough feedback online saying like there's just all this power going to waste. Like why are we like
Hmm.
what's the deal? Why can't we have this power for every game? So here's kind of how it breaks down. Like if you think about a lot of console games are locked at a certain performance level because they're just engineered to run a certain way on the console.
Yep.
And usually that lock is 30 frames per second. So even in a really good performing area of the game, it will never go above 30 frames because they just set it there as a cap, and then that's just what they want for consistency. Admittedly, it would look kind of weird if like the cap was 60, and then certain parts of the game dropped it to 20, and now you're back up to 60. Like that would just feel very, very strange. So a lot of games are capped, but other games are have unlocked frame rates. Until Dawn is a really good example where there's some scenes in Until Dawn that are just really, really smooth, and then it will tank where there's a lot of visual effects going on. So basically, all this because there's no standardization, people have just been testing every PS4 game under the sun to see what difference does boost mode make with it. Some people have the firmware because it's in beta right now. So just as a sampling, here's a Reddit thread with some examples of games that have been improved by turning on boost mode. I almost said beast mode again. Bloodborne is slightly improved frame rate, but still has frame pacing issues. Just Cause 3 is apparently almost a different game. The frame rate is that much better. Rainbow Six Siege runs at 110 FPS in terrorist hunt mode, which is a certain single player mode of it.
Holy crap.
Fallout 4
what would that even look like?
just
It's
it would look
more
like,
than realistic. It's like,
if you think about those TVs with that have the soap opera effect,
right? Yeah,
it would be that
for a
except
game.
maybe
Weird.
super crazy. Fallout 4 is locked at 30 FPS now without any hitching issues.
Oh wow.
Vanishing of Ethan Carter locked at 60. Assassin's Creed Unity is a constant 30 FPS now, and Unity was the one that was really, really bad, like the glitchiest Assassin's Creed game in memory. But so it ranges really. There's games that were trash before that are now great and playable, but then there's games like Star Wars Battlefront where Battlefront ran 98% perfectly before, but now it's 100% 60 FPS. It never falters from that. So you're really just seeing mixed results and people are testing with it, but in general it seems to be a very positive change and a positive feature for pro owners. But what it called to mind for me was it's very reminiscent of the PC landscape to me, because Sony acknowledges in the settings menu that if you encounter unexpected behavior, you should turn this off. So it kind of gets into that sort of Wild West, it's up to you, the user, what you want to do with your computer, your settings, you're responsible for the performance of your game in a sense. So I guess we're faced now with the issue of traditionally consoles have been very locked down. They run slightly under their maximum power for the best compatibility, and game makers put in soft caps to just make the whole thing feel more uniform. But with Sony's implementation of boost mode now and looking ahead at future consoles, do you think there's this responsibility for game makers to give a little bit of that power back to the user? If we're paying $400 for a console, $500 for a console down the line, does the manufacturer owe it to us to make sure that we have the option to use all of the available power? Or is it better, I guess, that they're locking us out of some things for maybe the smoothest overall experience, but then games that perform worse in general?
No, I mean, you buy the product that you buy, so it's you should just have all of the power available to you as soon as you buy it. And I think it's fine that developers know the product that they're making and how the game reacts a certain way with that system. So it doesn't make any sense to me why you would let a player screw around with, or why you'd put the extra effort in to have a consumer mess around with things that may or may not work when there's been an entire development team specifically catering a game to meet perfect performance they can on that specific system. We're just in a weird position that the PS4 Pro is completely not necessary to begin with,
and it kind of has
as
to
a
serve
device.
both masters. I sort of get why they soft locked it from the get go. I mean, obviously stuff like Last of Us and Uncharted 4, those have patches that tap into the full power. But I get why, from a careful perspective, you would initially lock, basically when you load up Killzone Shadowfall or Knack or whatever, the GPU downclocks to what the PS4 is at, the CPU downclocks to what the PS4 is at for just maximum compatibility. But I also, as a pro owner, I'm thrilled by this change, and I can't wait for the firmware because I want to test this with some games that I haven't played in a while.
Right.
Assassin's Creed Black Flag. Hell, even Unity. I think I've got a copy of Unity lying around here somewhere that I never got into.
But it's just a weird thing because the PS4 Pro shouldn't really be a thing in my view anyway. Like it just shouldn't be a console because it completely goes against the traditional structure of game console releases where it is a static piece of equipment for several years so that developers don't have to keep changing all of the stuff that they're doing to make games run on it.
Yeah, there's that frustrating part
So
as a
it's
game maker of like, well, what do I spec my game for? You
right. So
know?
the game
Do I...
we just made a couple years ago on the same software is now outdated because the company that made the console made just a tiny bit better console for no real reason. So it's just like that's where I see it more. It's just that I don't think the PS4 Pro serves any real purpose to anybody. It's not doing anything that special. It's just a slightly more powerful system for various business reasons, whatever they wanted to do for it. So I think for it's the only reason why this is becoming an issue are people wanting control for a device to be able to adjust settings like on a computer is just because they're losing that rigidity of console structure. So
I feel like, well, I mean, it's hard for us to say just sitting here, the two of us, but I wonder where the general consensus lies on that because PCs have been like this forever, consoles have been the opposite forever. But I don't think well, it's weird because there wouldn't be a flexible option like this in whatever the original, like the PS5 when it comes out is not going to have a beast mode because it will just be
right. It's just going to be that.
Its full power will be open to it, right? So that's
right. Which is the same as what PS4 was when it first came out.
Yeah, for sure. I do think there's a market for folks who want. Well, it's tough. I mean, there's people who really live and die by the console experience, and they want like the luxury of being able to bump up their frame rate on Assassin's Creed Unity or something by a little bit. I think that's sort of why it exists, as well as to bridge the gap between PS4 and PS5. I mean, we've talked before about how it just struck us as a weird announcement in general, but
the vast majority of console owners just want something they can throw a game into and they know it's going to work.
What is frustrating about this boost mode change for current PS4 owners is that before the PS4 Pro was clearly not like it wasn't a wholehearted recommendation, right? Like the list of things that you needed to have to really leverage it to its full potential, like a 4K HDR TV and all this kind of stuff, is it was a luxury purchase before, but now it's like if I'm a PS4 owner and I'm looking at my version of Fallout 4 or really just any game, like there's a decent chance that any game I own runs slightly better on the Pro, and that sucks. Just the knowledge of that to me kind of it's not like these games are unplayable anyway. I mean, Bloodborne, from what I'm reading, doesn't hardly change at all, and it is a mixed bag, but it starts to make the Pro feel a little less like sort of the luxury spin-off it was intended to be, and a little more like the next PlayStation iteration, which is frustrating for someone who already owns a 4, I guess.
Yeah.
It makes it all the more obvious as like the console you should buy if you don't own either of them, like if you're upgrading from a 3.
Right.
But it does segment the market more,
Yeah,
which I think is a good thing.
The PS4 has basically been thrown in a ditch by Sony with the releases, the 4.5, where it's just like, don't buy that one anymore. Like, don't buy the PS4. You have no reason to. If your PS4 breaks or if you don't have one, it's like clearly you're not going to get one of those. You're going to get a 4.5. So
and it raises the concern where it's like, okay, if developers like, if anyone now who owns a Pro has access to this GPU speed and this CPU speed, and if I'm Ubisoft, I'm making the next Assassin's Creed game, like I'm probably it gets harder and harder for you to ignore.
Yeah, you're going to be speccing all your
performance.
stuff to that. That's just what's going to happen. Is that all the developers are going to want to spec all their games to the 4.5, and it's going to make games run worse on the regular PS4.
And it's hard to blame them from a marketing perspective because a lot of the folks who are gonna like if you have a Reddit thread about how poorly Far Cry 5 performs on a base PS4, the comment section is going to be like, oh well, who cares? I want to know how it performs on the Pro.
Yeah.
Eventually that sentiment is just going to kind of shift.
Yeah, PS4 owners should just move on and get the 4.5. Stop complaining.
Right.
That's really, yeah, it's what it's going to be. It's going to turn into a lot of just a PC mentality from business and through consumer base if they keep doing stuff like this with
Mm.
consoles. So it's the same thing, goes back to the argument we had with the E3 being kind of a division of identity, where it's just like,
Yeah.
is E3 for journalists and industry professionals, or is it for public, or is it for both? And so it's like, is the PS4 the standard for PlayStation 4 games, or is the 4.5, or is it going to be both?
Hmm.
And is it going to be up to developers to pick which one they want to build their stuff off of, or is Sony going to say no, you have to build it based off of PS4 specifications, and then bump it up to the 4.5, or have an option to do that? Or are they just going to let developers say build them to the 4.5 specs and downgrade them to the 4?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't think it benefits Sony to really follow this arms race to its logical conclusion, because what you will end up with, like you said, is a PC type landscape where owners who have the Pro or the PS5 Pro or whatever will start to feel like they're a different audience than the ones who have the regular 5,
Mm-hmm.
and start to, the same with guys who have like the top tier $1,000 graphics card over the lowly guy who has the $300 graphics card, is that you start to lord it over each other,
Right.
and you start to acknowledge your equipment as the baseline, when in reality, like something like 70% of all computers registered with Steam have integrated GPUs.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so the perception kind of runs wild, and then it gets harder and harder for Sony to control the trajectory of their own product when there's
Yeah.
different products out there.
Yeah, and the PC landscape has been so wild for so many years, meaning that there are so many different options, so many different price ranges for different things, where it's just like, basically once you get a computer, you're just like, okay, like, you don't care about necessarily, it's just like, okay, there's so much money that could be sunk into this to make this the top thing that I'm just not going to worry about. And
Hmm.
I'm fine with this for a few years, and then it's up to me it's up to me to when I want to upgrade that. And
That could hurt them too with a new console launch,
right,
where the PC mentality often says, "Oh, cool, it's the new NVIDIA line, but I'm probably fine for a couple more years. Like I'll wait it out." There will be folks who see the PS5 announcement and who who analyze the specs, and they look at the specs and they go, "Well, I'm just gonna assume you're gonna come out with a PS5 Pro, and I'll wait for that." Like
right,
there's always a doubt in your mind of, is this really the final
yeah,
console?
because it hurts the people. Yeah, it hurts the people that want to get this new system on launch, because it's just like, you're immediately worried if you're going to be put out to pasture essentially, when in another year or two or something they're going to have a better version of what you just sank in $500 for, or something like
Hmm.
that, where it's just like, why did I waste my money on that when a year later, 2 years later, you released another version that's either slightly cheaper for more power, or it's the same price for more power? And it's just going to damage relationships for consumers, is what I see it as. But
Yeah, and possibly hurt launch sales
yeah,
with the folks who want to wait.
so it sounds like they're getting a positive reaction for the PS4.5 with a lot of stuff that they're doing, and I just kind of am wary of that from my own position as a consumer. Just that I was completely disinterested in the 4.5 to begin with. I saw it as a completely pointless thing. But then if they're gonna start
In the Pro to begin with.
in the Pro, yeah, where it's just like, why does this exist when the games look just fine on PS4? Like, I just, to me, that's what I feel like the most of the mentality is for console games, is that it looks great. That's fine.
Already?
Like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's like, I don't care about tiny performance increases. Like, that's not what the console base is. That's what the PC base is, where it's just like
Right.
they want to push things as far as they can, as soon as they can, with immediate iterations, where it's like, it's you need this. They're too interested in merging those markets. To me, it's like they want to make consoles more like PCs, where they can make more money off of different parts increases or different things like that.
Yeah, I get a lot of my thoughts on Pro from reading NeoGAF, which is like one of the most hardcore gaming communities out there. So there's no doubt about how, I mean, really the attitude there is like a bunch of people who are PC gamers and who have been in that FPS mindset for years now, just kind of upset that they couldn't play Bloodborne because it wasn't on PC, or they couldn't play Neo because it wasn't on PC. But now they've got this device that allows them to tinker, for lack of a better word. Like it sort of feels like a tinker upgrade from the base console, and so
Hmm.
it appeals to that technically minded sort of self-perceived hardcore crowd. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, to me, boost mode is great for pro owners. Obviously, like it's nothing but an improvement, but it also leaves leaves you wary about what it means going forward, and hopefully it doesn't foreshadow a future where Sony dives in on this even more,
Yeah.
with optional settings and modifications and stuff.
Yeah, I just think they should leave well enough alone and then just give developers time to breathe. Not have to be
Yeah,
worried about jumping every. If a game takes 2 to 3 years to make for a lot of the big titles, don't be releasing a new console essentially every 2 to 3 years and forcing them to adapt and adjust and moving
yeah, I
forward
think
and
maybe
just.
there's a better balance. Like, don't have the PS3, like, maybe you don't need a 6 or 7 year life cycle, because then developers start to feel hamstringed. But perhaps 4 to 5 years on an upgrade is okay, and spec
Yeah.
it really high to begin with. Eat the cost of doing that, um, to foster goodwill for the next 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, I think that
Future,
would. Yeah, I think that would be great. But yeah, it's a challenge because of how quickly technology is improving.
of course, yeah.
But yeah, if you give like a 4 year, 5 year buffer where it's just like you can let people develop on the same software for that amount of time, or for like if for like like 7 years or 8 years or whatever the model is for systems, and the halfway point you release the incremental upgrade or whatever, where it's not. I don't know. I just think that it'd be better just to move on fully
Mm.
when you're advancing consoles. But
The technology upgrades are tough too, because one of the things firmware 4.5 also added was the ability to plug in an external hard drive and
yeah,
have games stored there. So now you've got up to 8 terabytes of PS4 storage space without having to take your console apart, which is really just Sony throwing its hands up in the air, going, "Fine, we didn't realize how much hard drive space you would need, so plug in your own."
yeah,
But hopefully there isn't a future. I mean, this is where I could see it with console upgrades becoming a thing, is not a situation where you have the new PS4 Pro, but like this exists for laptops now. Like you can have a separate GPU box, kind of a processing box like PSVR has,
hmm
and plug it into a laptop to enable, like basically give it the power of a desktop GPU. Um, Hopefully that doesn't become standard for the console market, where a few years into the console, all right, now we've got the Pro box and you plug it into your system and now you've got
yeah.
twice the power.
External graphics cards. Just
Exactly.
like
No, yeah, exactly. That's a thing
yeah,
already. PCs for
yeah,
laptops anyway.
right. And it's just like all that random crap you're gonna have to plug in to
Hmm.
compete. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway,
but all right,
What do you got?
we're pushing a little far already. We talked a bit, but my next one. Let's see where to start. Is we got some details on Destiny 2
yes, we did.
moving
That's
forward.
right.
So, we both had played Destiny when it first came out and all this stuff. I actually went back to it somewhat recently, a couple of months ago.
Hmm.
Played through some of the stuff again, but obviously our biggest concern that was shared with the entire world was that the story was non-existent to just sucking.
Yeah, that's not a great better worse scenario, but that is how it was.
Yeah, but Destiny 2 is they're still targeting a release window for 2017, which is just like we don't know anything about this game really yet, and they want it to come out this year. But there is potential talk. Well, first let's talk about addressing the biggest thing that they had is that they are really pushing having a more cinematic story and a really more engaging story with some of the characters like Xur and Agents of the Nine and the Cryptarch and all these different people that you interact with in passing in the first game. So they're really focusing on creating something that's more engulf or more I can't think of the word engrossing to the player, and also be more accessible to a casual player without losing the interest of the core players that they have on there. Were more the kind of MMO side style.
We want
players,
to bake
so.
our cake, have it, and eat it as well.
Right. That's kind of, yeah, they're saying a lot of different things where it's just like good luck to what you're doing. But
for sure.
They want there is so the goal that they had from Activision was saying is that they want to broaden the franchise's global reach, which was a key thing that caught the ears of a number of people saying, is this mean that they are potentially looking into cross-platform playing? So I got a couple things I want to jump off with for this, but well, I know for you, I think I stuck around with Destiny a little bit longer than you did, but not by much.
Yeah, I think that sounds right. I played it pretty enthusiastically for like a month and a half.
But it was also just competing with Final Fantasy 14 at the time because that was still fairly new.
Right.
So, but what would a Destiny 2 need to get you back into it?
Oh,
is it just story?
I mean, well, no, it's a little more than story, I think. And I don't think it's going to go in this direction because that's not where the money is for them. So it's kind of a foregone conclusion. But when the Destiny announcement was first made, it wasn't just the story and the planetary exploration that interested me. It was, to put it rather bluntly, the idea of having a Halo type game on PlayStation. Like, it was something like, and by a Halo type game, I mean not only the controls and stuff, which Destiny nailed, but like the notion of a 15 mission campaign that can be played in co-op that has medals for your performance with a really tight PvP sort of matchmaking thing. I didn't necessarily want the shared world that it became, because I do have an MMO in my life already, and I certainly am not up for committing to grinding out both of them. And from what I understand, in its very, very endest of the end games, Destiny is the same kind of daily light grind that Final Fantasy 14 becomes. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, that was actually more what I wanted, but the problem is that despite I have faith that they will go in the right direction with the story, because I think they've heard those complaints from day one, and they realize that it did sort of, it cut off their audience a little bit. Like their end game is, of course, they want you to stick around, pay for DLC, pay for cosmetics and such. But if you can't rope in the single player minded person with a really strong story and universe, you never had a chance to rope them in anyway. So starting there, that's probably a positive change. I'm a little worried about being so behind on the lore. Like, from what I read in that announcement, it sounded like it was very, like, it was really name heavy. Like, I had no idea what they were talking about from the leaks and then the announcement, where it was like, well, this is how the story will go, following from the Taken King with so-and-so having reclaimed the throne. And I'm like, oh my goodness, what is this?
But so much of that stuff got lost on people because they do have a good game population still, or pretty solid group of people that still play that game. But like, for me, when I went back to it, it was because I was just trying to do some cleanup of my games list backlog, and I had bought the Taken King months and months ago. And I realized, it's like, oh, I should just play it. But I mean, I think there was a good percentage of people that played well before any of the DLC came out. And that's what they're building off of for their next game, which is like, is that really the best place to start? Or what kind of catch-up are they going to do? Are they going to do a thing like a Mass Effect, where there's just like a brief kind of like comic intro, or for like the game that you may or may not have played, where you just do quick decision-making on like what choices you wanted, or just to build some backstory, or just some kind of cinematic to like catch you up with the history and start.
Yeah, that would have been. Yeah, I mean, that'd be great if they went in that direction. I really liked that with Mass Effect 2, because it never got to play the original. Well, but by that point in its life cycle, since it wasn't on PlayStation at the time. But yeah, I would also appreciate more of a linear adventure structure, and that's the part that I don't think they'll ever really give us. Is I think it will be open-ended, maybe more cutscenes, more story, a better told adventure, but like I don't think it's going to have like a traditional three-act structure with,
Well,
a really meaningful boss
well,
battles,
one
the
of the
things that I
quotes
associate
that
with
they
Halo.
had, one of the quotes they had was that we've made it more accessible to someone who just wants to have a great, more casual first-person action experience. So it sounds like they're attempting to streamline, at least for story stuff. But does that mean that you have to still hit those certain benchmarks for gear and stuff to make it through those
To
areas?
actually advance,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's the thing where it's just like, okay, it sounds like you're doing what people want, but can you actually do it? It's kind of my where I'm at right now because
I,
it's
yeah, I wonder if, I mean, maybe the way to do it is to get rid of the traditional. Well, because here's the problem: is that you level up from 1 to 20 or 1 to 30 or whatever, and then you hit the end game, and then all of your leveling happens through your item level, through your light level, and
yeah.
that's how you distinguish between players. So in my mind, why not just ditch the notion of level ups entirely during the campaign, since this isn't really a RPG. Like
Hmm.
it's so much more a shooting game and an action game. You could still award skill points from major moments in the story, like every boss fight awards a skill point, or if you really explore the environment, you can find like hidden skill point containers, so that you do have some character investment while you're playing the story, something like a Deus Ex. But then, yeah, you're not being locked out of the next mission because your level ups didn't happen. The skill points are more so for just your abilities. You're not Enemies aren't getting bloated health amounts, bloated damage amounts that you can't keep up with.
Yeah.
So structure more like a tradition, like a Halo,
Yeah,
where from front to back you can handle it.
that's what I want to know is that what what does Bungie consider casual? Because that's
Very good
such a
question.
loaded word for
Yeah.
games. Because you can have like what's a casual first action experience is such a just a totally non-definitive descriptor. Or it's just like there's casual first-person shooters and casual RPGs,
Hmm.
and those are very different things. So how do you combine those two and make it casual? Because the person in the mindset of a casual first-person shooter
Like
is
that's
not
like
going
a
to
Call of
agree is
Duty
not
10
going to
hour
agree with a
campaign and
lot of
that's
the
it.
stuff that you would consider casual for an RPG. They think
Right.
it's completely unnecessary. It's a time sucker. It's a bunch of different stuff that they don't care about. Same with the other way. It's just like if you have a casual RPG person, they're going to want a lot more to sink their teeth into than what a first-person shooter would provide.
Yeah.
So marrying those two identities is going to be really interesting to see what they come up with. But I'm glad that they're addressing the biggest thing of the story, though. I realized that they just kind of blew that one entirely.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the biggest thing for me. I think I can deal
Hmm.
with some of the more grindier aspects or the level up aspects that just felt sort of ham-horned into there. I can deal with those in service of a good plot and good characters.
Yeah.
But I think what I most wanted was a separation of these game modes, like just being able to play something of the quality, like the kind of quality sci-fi blockbuster that Halo has always been. And I think Destiny let me down on the blockbuster elements of it because I need the
Yeah.
sort of cinematic epicness for it to feel that way.
Yeah. It just kind of felt like you were playing a beta the whole time.
Yeah, it's yeah, for sure. Especially in that there was just so little dialogue, so little exposition that it did have sort of a beta vibe
Yeah.
to it.
There was a
And then
ton of
shifted.
groundwork that was there that you could see that you
Right.
just knew, like from stuff we found out later through the development and some of the turmoil that they had, that it was just like all the stuff that they wanted to do was there. They just like stuff happened and they couldn't do it for
Diablo
release.
might be a good Diablo might be a good model for them to follow in the sense that a lot of people consider like some people actually call it an MMO, even though I personally disagree with that because it's such a shared world thing that friends can drop into your game at any time. There is an auction house that's shared among all players, but you're never just hanging out in like a capital city with 30 other people. You're generally in your own single player RPG. It
Hmm.
just can become co-op whenever you want it to, but there's a very strong story, really great boss fights. It has a very traditional structure, but yet still feels kind of MMO-y. And I think how you could do that with Destiny is keep that structure for as long as possible, have the same sort of incentives for replaying the game over and over, like Diablo has, where there's like 10 difficulty levels and the loot just keeps getting better and better.
Hmm.
But then have the end game. You can have the end game that Destiny currently does, where you queue up for raids and for matchmaking, but it's just I feel like it never knew what it wanted to be. It had I can't remember the name of the city where all the players meet. It's not the Citadel, is it?
The tower? No,
Yeah,
yeah, Citadel is Mass Effect.
yeah, right, right.
I can't remember if it's the same thing. I think it's just the tower.
Someone's screaming at us through
Yeah, I don't know.
SoundCloud right now.
But yeah,
It's the tower. But no, like there was that, but then that's just like you
Taken
don't.
King did expand. They did have another new area that you could meet in,
Oh, okay.
which was that was really nice. But it was like, why didn't this exist before? Because it was like it felt so hollow.
It's
But
just a little odd that you can queue up for raids and for strikes remotely, like through
yeah,
like basically through a traditional matchmaking server, and yet there's this shared city with other people where you just kind of stand around, and then most of the time when you go to a planet, you don't see a ton of other people. Occasionally, like one or two will pop in as you move closer to them.
yeah,
So it was always like, what does it really want to be? And I think making it more of the word here would be a theme park game where these
mhm,
sections are kind of cordoned off. Like that's what I'm hoping for. A really epic single player component, a cool end game where you are queuing up for strikes and raids. And never do the two really have to meet. Like I don't see a ton of value in having a social space where you just jump around and do emotes with other people. I think the Diablo model, where there's some separation, makes sense to me.
hmm. Yeah. Well, that would be really interesting. But yeah. Well, speaking of having it being shared, the last part that caught my attention, which is it's just been a kind of a low buzz talking point for a long time now, is that having cross-play between systems, and that was something that people are hoping for, given the interview that had happened recently, saying that
Right.
they broadening the franchise's global reach. So the first one was on PlayStation and Xbox, and it didn't come to PC for whatever reason. Um, but now it's definitely on the radar for them to be putting it out on PC, or it sounds like they're hinting at that it could potentially be coming out on that on PC as well. But how do you think it would actually help or hurt having crossplay between the systems? Because there are some games that have done that and have gone through it, and either I think Rocket League, I think they did implement it. I can't remember where they had it between Xbox and PlayStation. That was like the first one that was pushing for that between those two, the two home consoles. But like Final Fantasy 11 and 14 have done PC and PS4, so we know that those, or at PS2, which we know that PlayStation can communicate with PC and stuff like that.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
but do you think is that something that's actually that would benefit consumers, the industry, developers, or would that just be more of a hindrance?
In the case of Destiny, I find it to be a hindrance for the sole reason that it would make communication is essential in that game for the higher difficulty content, and it isn't
Hmm.
possible. I don't want to say it isn't possible. Like when I think of PS4 strikes and raids, if you're doing them with your friend, you're most likely creating a party, like you're using PS4 party chat,
Yep.
and just the very nature of being cross gaming with people from other servers, like that doesn't work. Like if you choose that method, you're having to exclude other people. So then you have to figure out other ways to do it. Like if your friend plays on PC and your other friend plays on Xbox and you're on PS4, you all need to hop onto Discord or TeamSpeak or Skype or something. So it throws a monkey wrench in there where I feel like with people who game together frequently, I mean, they usually just have the same platform. So
Hmm.
you're kind of you're sort of opening the door to more player collaboration, which sounds good in theory, but then with that comes, oh, wait, we don't have an easy way to communicate. And I guess if we want everyone to feel included, we need to use other methods. Now, the flip side of that would be if they had voice chat hosted in game, which is expensive and puts a strain on servers. So I'm not sure that they would go that route either.
Hmm.
I mean, it feels like a weird thing to complain about, but I can see the logistical issues with it sprouting from it. And the thing about Destiny is that it's such a huge game that the audiences on every platform are going to be massive no matter what. Like, you'll never have a problem finding people to play with,
Yep.
which is where I think that cross-platform would help, and it doesn't feel necessary here.
Is it something that should be implemented in the future for the industry as a whole, do you think? Or do you... personally, to me, I think it would just become just a big mess eventually, where it's just like some games would be fine and be able to do it all right, and they would be able to get that connectivity between friends
Sure.
on other consoles or things like that. But I mean, that's really what it comes down to, is that it would be, that's what it's for, is for people that you know that are on PS4 and you have a friend who's on Xbox. Like, just by default, whatever reason, like anybody else you're playing with online, it doesn't matter. But
What's sort of interesting...
I see it
Sorry,
devolving
go ahead.
into being a conflict where it's just basically a couple of developers will be willing to do it, and then there's going to be a lot of backlash for company developers that don't do it for other games, and people just complaining about, well, these people did it, why won't you do it?
It's weird how it might change the perception of the devices too, where we always kind of talk about PlayStation and PlayStation and Xbox, like, you buy the system with the exclusive franchises that you care about because the rest of it's pretty much identical. And that's sort of how we feel about it already, but then it almost just reinforces that even more, because if every multi-platform game has shared servers and shared communication, then you are literally only buying one system over another because you like Halo, not Uncharted, or you like Horizon, not Half-Life, and that becomes the only functional difference between them. So I don't know if that's good or bad. I just kind of find that interesting, that change in perception. But for... I don't know. I guess for practical reasons, the one difficulty I think of is PC controls being different than consoles. So you'd have to, for shooters especially, you'd have to have some kind of keyboard and mouse support for the consoles to really have parity, or at least give gamers the option to say, I'm going to make a server, or I'm going to host a multiplayer game, but I'm going to exclude mouse and keyboard users to keep it on the level, to not introduce any competitive advantages.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess a mess is what you could call it, which you did. Just something that raises a lot of questions. I think it's probably good for the gamer at like the 20,000-foot view of the long term, because of the way it can bring people together and just give you more folks to play with. But it takes a lot of front end work, because you have to, as the developer, you have to manage the net code between these services. You have to acknowledge that at times PSN is less stable than Xbox Live, and at times the PC gamer is just going to have the best connection and the best ping, without question, because it's a direct line. There's no network to transmit through, etc. It could create situations where, in order to play the latest Assassin's Creed game together, everyone has to be signed in with a Uplay account. Like, there might need to be some kind of connected, like, because what name appears in game, right? Like, is it your PSN gamer tag? Probably not. It probably has to be your Uplay account name, right, or your EA account name. So the more of those I spout off, the more I don't really like the sound of it. But I think with anything like that, there's growing pains, and so I could see a future, like in 20 years or something, where everyone's just kind of gotten used to those foils, and in general, people appreciate it.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree that it could be I think initially when you say something like that, it sounds like it's a good idea, but it's, like you were saying, there's so much internal structure and foundational work that needs to be done before anything like that could actually be feasible and practical in any real sense. So, all right. I think that's it. We went a little longer this week on some of our topics, but
Owing to mine. I had a lot of thoughts on those on my topics, I guess. I couldn't stop.
yeah,
But
no, the E3 one kind of set me off a little bit, but
yeah. I enjoy the Destiny chat though, because I like it whenever a talk can kind of bring me around to more of a positive vibe on something, like our Nintendo Switch chat did. And I think, if nothing else, like, I'm hopeful for Destiny. Like, if it turns out to be the same case as the first game, it's not like I've been wronged by it at all. I just won't play it. So
yeah, and Bungie's clearly has the pedigree to make amazing games.
Yeah, just
And
look at the gap between Halo 1 and Halo 2, right?
yeah, so I'm very hopeful for it. I'm just surprised that it's coming this year still, and we don't know anything about it. So, but anyway, this has been episode 53 of PlayStation Fix. Thanks again or thanks as always for the very, very thorough conversations on our
Yeah, of
topics,
course.
Kyle. If you want more on all your PlayStation coverage, go to psu.com for all of our news, reviews, previews, videos, everything out there. You can find PlayStation Fix on our YouTube channel at PSUtube. You can also get us on SoundCloud and on iTunes. Please leave reviews, like, comment, all that stuff so we know how to make the show better for you all out there. You can tweet at us at PSUDOTCOM, which is PSU.com, all spelled out. Thanks again for listening to this episode, you guys, and we'll see you all in the next one. Take care.